I've finally decided to put the front wheel bearings into Peugeot Tweet scooter. So what I've done so far is, as you can see from this scooter, there's nothing in there at the moment, either side. Oh, let's just turn the other one around. Nothing in there as well. It's a few months since I took this apart, so I'm doing this now so I can remember what I actually did. I think you'll find here there's just one bearing fits in there. This one. It just slits down there, and on top of here is the brake rotor. You can see the bolt holes there, so that just fits on there. I think on top of that is a seal. Let me just find the seal. I did have it in my hand just 2 minutes ago. Wait a second, let me just find the seal. Wait a second. Here's the seal. Let me just sort this display out so we can see what we're doing. So in this side where the rotor is, we've got a wheel bearing, which is this one here. Can you see that just about? And on top of that we have a seal. These wheel bearings, the reference for them is, let me just have a quick look, 6201 RS. Which you can get from, they're just standard bearings really. I know you can buy the ones from Peugeot, but it's better just to find a bearing supplier and buy them from there. They'll all have the same reference, 6201 RS. And this seal that goes on top of it, can you see there? I wrote the dimensions down. It's just a conventional seal, it's just hollow inside there, and the markings are on the outside. Let me just, I did write them down somewhere, yeah. 20 by 32 by 5. That's 20 by 32 by 5. It's just a basic seal, nothing special. I must say, before I go any farther, I tend to put grease inside here. That's just my way. It's not necessary, but I just fill that with grease. That's just something I do normally, really. So what I've actually got is, this is the grease I'm using these days. It's kind of just a waterproof grease. I think it's used on scooters quite a lot. Can you see the thing? It's only cheap to buy a whole tin of it. It's just called corrosion block grease. I'm just reading the can you, oh yes, it's focusing I think. Corrosion block grease. So it's actually a blue colour, so I don't know whether it's just me who likes blue. But anyway, it is like a scooter grease really. So what I'll be doing is, when I decide to put these bearings in, I'll be smearing the inside with a very thin film of this grease. For two reasons really. A, I hope it's going to help the bearing to be pushed in, and secondly, I'm thinking that as it's the front wheel old scooters, they're always full of water. Whenever it rains, there's going to be water everywhere. And if I can stop any water just creeping around the edge of that bearing, that's obviously going to help the bearing. You know, the bearing isn't totally, although it looks sealed, obviously when it gets wet, there's water going to be everywhere, isn't there? So I thought to myself, it would be worthwhile just putting some grease on the inside, which would help the seal. And the same with the outer seal as well, that it will be worthwhile putting some grease on the outside of this as well, so that when you push it in, it'll stop any water passing around it. This is the actual spacer that fits in between. Obviously it fits down in the between, it's inside the wheel. But although this is actually not steel or iron, I'm not sure what sort of material it is, whether it's been nickel plated or something, but I'm actually going to give it a bit of a coating with petroleum jelly. I know it's a bit overkill, these things, but Vaseline is another brand name they call it. I don't know if you can read that. It would just stop any water again. You know, if it was steel or metal that rusted, well then it would stop that rusting, because water is inevitably going to get past there anyway. I know it's like a sealed wheel, but water just does get past. So I'm going to coat this little spacer with this petroleum jelly once I start to put it back together again. Let me just put the wheel down, then I can talk to you about the other bits that I'm doing. So one side has got the seal, one side hasn't. One side has got the speedometer cable, and on that side I don't think there's a seal, it's just the bearing. And the bearing, it's the same bearing both sides, so the common bearing, so you just buy two. It's the same one. So the next, my plan this time, usually I just use the old bearing, put it on top of the new one, and just use a hammer, maybe with a block of wood or something, and hammer it in. But I thought to myself, I want to try a different way really, because obviously hammering bearings can't be good for the bearings, can it, having those wax to your head. So what I've decided to do is I bought some bearing press, which are aluminium pieces with a hole through the middle. Yeah, I bought a set. They're only quite cheap on eBay anyway, so I just bought a set. I actually bought 2 sets. And the idea is that this will fit. They actually fit just slightly, they're slightly smaller than the bearing itself, but they will fit on the outside lip. You never fit something to inside the lip, because by pushing that you're actually distorting the bearing. So you always put the pressure on the outside. There's a lip there, it looks like 1.5 millimeters or something, quite small, and the actual, this fitment is actually just slightly smaller than the bearing, which is going to be an advantage, because when you push it in, if it was the same size, that will be stuck in as well, and you cause yourself another problem. So you'll find that is slightly smaller. So the idea being that pushes the bearing in. What I've decided to do is use this idea. This is a piece of 10mm threaded rod, and I bought a bolt either side, and I've also got some washers, large penny washers they're called. They're quite thickish, about 1.5 millimeters thick, and they're quite large really. The idea being that, let's just take this off, then I can just show you. This rod, of course, goes through the middle of the wheel, through that, of course, and at either end, of course, you would put the two let's have a quick look. You start off with the washer, of course, then where it's not the seal side, you start off with the, not that that matters anyway, then you actually have this, just make sure it's the right way around, yeah. So you would have that, then you would have the bearing, then of course it would fit through the centre of the wheel, which is where the spacer would be. Then of course at the other side would be the other bearing, followed by the spacer, of course, and followed by the bolt. And what you're actually aiming to do is make sure that it stays level all through. So when you start to tighten this side and the other side, it remains level. So you're actually pulling these bearing into the recesses in the wheel, and it's going to be level. It's not going to be tilting either way, this way. You're keeping it level. So you're going to use one of these this side, and actually I've got I bought 2 sets. So on the other side, let me just take that off. So let me just put that down. So you've got the bearing there. Let me just find the other set. 2 sets. Yeah, there we go. See, put the other one with the washer, and then you screw on this. Of course, as I've already mentioned, this is actually through the centre of the wheel. We haven't put it through the wheel as yet, but this then screws on, and you start to screw from both ends, and it will pull in these bearings into the wheel. What I'm going to do is later I'm going to make another video which is actually showing you the process. So I'll set this up in the wheel, I'll bring it up on top here, and then actually start screwing it. Then you can see it actually in action. If it's not going well, it's not going well, but at least that you can see me trying to do this way. It's just an alternative to the hammering idea, and other people have suggested using a fridge for the bearings and then heating up the rim of the wheel, but I don't really like that sort of idea. I've tried to cool them down, but I don't think it makes that much difference. I think I'd rather try this method and see how it, if we have any success with it. Is there anything else I need to mention? Of course, you put the seal in afterwards. You don't need to put it in at this stage. The seal is just a push fit and a little tap with a rubber mallet or something, and that will just drop in anyway. And as I mentioned, this only goes in at one side, which I think is the where the rotor is. The other side is the speedometer, which clips in there. So I think that's the end of that one video. So I'll come back later with video number 2 to show the it actually happening.